Alrighty, so hi everyone, good afternoon. I hope you are all doing well on this lovely Thursday. Uh, for those of you, this may be kind of a refresher and some information that you are already aware of or familiar with. Some of you have used rat stats, possibly. Others, this may be brand new topic in general, and you may be looking for a new tool that you can utilize in your own auditing practices at your provider. And this also gives you a good overview of the tool that we use at CBH when we are putting together our audits, be it targeted or pro. So we'll jump right in. Our agenda for this presentation, let's review. We're going to go over sampling. It's going to be fun. I know statistics is a very exciting topic, so please curtail your enthusiasm. So we'll review sampling in basic terms, ideas that you need to help you better understand what it is RatStats is doing. What's new, we shall go over the differences between the former 2010 version of RatStats that was used prior to 2019 and their updated, as Ken put it in this morning's meeting, more 90s modernized interface with some changes that they have. And finally, the part 3, the how-to. I will walk you through the steps of developing a random sample based on a population that I put together. Don't worry if some of you have attended the RatStats training or forum presentation before. I promise we will not go into so much detail, and I will try to keep you on board. It's a very simple, simple process that I just want to show you the ease that you can utilize in your own practices. And despite the big fancy words or scary stat stuff, it's actually really simple to use and can help save a lot of time. So let's review sampling. So we have a population. Sampling is the process by which a subset or the sample is obtained. So you have your population. This is a representative sample. In order to not look at everything in this huge population, we identify a sample that will help give us a better understanding of the population as a whole. Some common terms related to sampling: population, again, the entire pool for which we're going to pull our sample. The sample itself, the subset of the population. The frame, which is, as you can read, a sampling frame, collection of units from which a sample is drawn. The data normally homogeneous and share similar characteristics. For instance, in developing a sample, a frame could be the date range that you're going to be looking at, or the specific level of care that you're looking at, or for providers with multiple locations, a location specific. Those are all part of the sampling frame. Unit, what is being measured in the audit. So for us in compliance, we measure claim lines as our sampling unit. Confidence interval, this is where it gets exciting. Probability the value of a parameter falls within a specified range. We'll get more into that as I go through RatStats for you. Our confidence interval gives you...
Matt, if we could interrupt, I just want to make sure. I got one person saying that they only have a black screen, but the Matt's, they got a message saying that the screen sharing had started. So if other folks could just reply back to me, let me know if everybody can see it. I'd appreciate it.
Oh no.
Yeah, so it seems like it may be a issue limited to one person. So thanks for all the feedback. So if you can't see Matt's slides at this point, but you can hear him, I would suggest just kind of getting out, trying to get back in, and then see if you can see it then. Sorry, Matt.
No problem. Do you want me to resume?
Yeah, please. Thanks. It seems like really seems like it's limited to one person. I just wanted to make sure that everybody could see it.
Yeah, great. Okay, good. Um, so confidence interval, the percentage at which the sample adequately identifies the population. So how representative is this sample of the population as a whole is your confidence interval. Precision point, some of you may know this, especially being at around election time, the plus or minus margin of error. So a measure of the closeness of the sample estimate to the corresponding population. Some different forms or methods of sampling. Simple random sampling, probability of being selected is known and equal for all members. At CBH, in, for instance, our probe audits, and when we're talking about self audits, simple random sampling is primarily what we use. Stratification, dividing a population into different subgroups or strata. And so sampling stratification would be of those different subgroups, you pull a sample of each of those subgroups. So when can we use sampling, or rat stats rather? In probe audits, so some of you in the provider network may be familiar with CBH compliance, our use of probe audits for assessing risk. It's also good as a provider in your own agency practicing a strong compliance plan to conduct own probe audits or self audits to investigate either an allegation or for daily upkeep, checking in, making sure on a random basis that the work being done, adheres to your provider's contract and all the details that you are all familiar with. Self audits will also be something that Lauren and Leanne in Compliance 102 are going to touch on in much more detail than I. So I will leave all the fun stuff to them, but I'm sure they may reference rat stats and random sampling in their presentation. So a self audit, there's two ways according to the OIG self-disclosure protocol. You can review all the claims affected or a statistically valid random sample of the claims. For some instances where there may be 1,000 claims, going through all those may be very time consuming and more of a burden than your agency may be able to do. Therefore, having the ability to use a tool like RatStats to develop a statistically valid random sample is both efficient and timely. So the process, excuse me. Apologies. So let's get into it. Step one, define the population. What it is we are going to be looking at. Identify the sampling frame. What are the details? What do we want our sample to look at? So if the population is IOP, okay, what is the sampling frame? Is there a specific location? Is there a time frame between two certain dates? Those go into that frame. Select a sample design or procedure. So again, that goes back to the simple random sampling, or if you so choose and you may have resources or some members in your agency that are stat wizards, then they may work with you to identify maybe a stratified sample. Determine the sample size. Draw the sample. Oh no, skipping steps. All right, I got it. Determine the sample size. RatStats will help us do that and draw the sample from the population. Trust that process. Okay, as you can see here, CMS makes note of it. If a particular probability sample design is properly executed, defining the universe, frame, the units, proper randomization, accurately measuring the variables of interest, and using the correct formulas for estimation, then assertions that the sample and its resulting estimates are not statistically valid cannot be legitimately made. In other words, probability sample and its results are always valid. Follow the process and you will come out with a valid sample every time. So what's new? As Ken pointed out earlier, out with the old and in with the new, sort of. So as you can see, on the left, we have RatStats 2010 version. Very dated, brings you back to the old, when computers first came out with Windows 95. And now we've moved up to the 2019 version.
Matt
Cleaner,
just clearly
sleeker.
dated himself, saying the computers came out in 1995. Just pointing out,
I
those of us
referenced
who are,
Windows 95,
I'm just
sir.
saying, those are, I can still remember C64 and the original Apple, but please continue.
Yeah, I can't reference the original Apple. So what are the changes? In between the 2019 version and the 2010, the 2019 is capable of replicating the same data as the 2010 version. This is important and actually really good, because if there were any samples developed using the 2010 version, the 2019 has been programmed to be able to replicate and present the same sample information and data and use the same algorithms that the 2010 version did. So it will be identical if you used the previous version or the new version. Bug fixes, technology these days, everything advances very quickly. Computers and their operating systems update more frequently. And so OIG put out the 2019 version, which helped with some bugs that they were experiencing with newer operating systems and using the program. Modules removed. There are a few modules that OIG realized they hadn't used in the past 5 years related to t-tests and other sampling measures. And so since they themselves haven't even used it in 5 years, they decided to remove it. The new features, option to calculate confidence interval using the empirical likelihood approach for unrestricted and stratified variable appraisals. I'll be honest, I do not call myself a statistician in any way, shape, or form. This using confidence interval with empirical likelihood 3 approach is not something I plan on doing. Ken, I hope you have no desire to as well. But
Absolutely not.
okay, good. So simple random sampling. That's all I'm all about it. This new feature in the 2019 version allows the option to generate custom confidence intervals or confidence levels, excuse me, in the unrestricted attribute and stratified attribute modules. Again, maybe there are some statisticians or OIG that can really get into the nitty gritty of RatStats. We like it because it helps define simple random sampling, statistically valid samples, and is easy to use. All content able to be displayed in a text alternative file. So if you want to save all of your work in a text file and not have to take screenshot after screenshot, the 2019 version will convert everything that it presents to a text file that you can save and have in your files when you save them. What can it do? What can RatStats do? Determine statistically valid sample size, generate replicable random number sets through seed numbers, which is important, and determines a range of financial impacts based on the sample reviewed. That gets into more of the extrapolation piece. As far as the extrapolation piece goes, it is very rare for us to utilize extrapolation. And so in presenting RatStats and all it can do, it's important to note that that is capable. But for this presentation, we're going to keep the focus on the random sampling and helping with creating your own audits for either self-audits or understanding how CBH utilizes rat stats to develop our own audits. Touching on the seed numbers, this is very important and something that is key to rat stats. The seed number allows other people, so be it another auditor or an agency or CBH, to replicate the same number set, which will give us the same pull of our sample. So if I were to develop a sample and Ken wanted to pull it or demonstrate it himself and see how I got to that point using the seed number, RatStats will calculate the same algorithm and present to you the same numbers. So that way you get the same results and there's no difference or issues between the two. For those of you who love stat, here is the magic illustrated. These are examples of the different equations that are used. And you can see in the top left, the example of a random number set. Fortunately, we have RatStats to calculate all this. Didn't go into math. So the how-to. Ken, do we have any questions before I get into the how-to, you think?
Doesn't look like it. We did have just a reminder that there was also Radio Shack's Tandy computer, which predated Windows 95. Again, not that you dated yourself or anything, but bonus points for the person who mentioned the Radio Shack Tandy. I think that was like a build your own computer too. That's before you could even buy them built, which totally blows Matt's mind.
I know the Apple II. That was a big deal about the Apple II. See?
So yeah, the only other thing I would add while we wait to see if anybody has any questions at this point is Matt is exactly correct. He suggested, and I concurred completely, to kind of sidestep the extrapolation piece for financial impacts, just because it's so rarely used by us, and it gets into another level of technicality and kind of difficulty in understanding. But as you're doing self-audit, it may be something that you want or need in order to finish the self-audit out. And so one of the reasons that we, and Lauren and Leanne are going to touch on it too, that we really encourage you to get in touch with us before you head down that road, is to make sure that we can walk you through that if there are any questions, because it is a very effective and useful piece of RatStats, but it does raise the difficulty level up. And just the other thing to keep in mind, Matt and I joke about it, but to the extent possible, we try to keep it to simple, non-stratified sampling. The only time you need to waiver from that potentially, and Matt can correct me if I'm wrong, but is if you believe that that your population has two groups in it, your universe has two groups in it that behave differently. And even then, what we would suggest and what we've done in the past is do different samples for those groups, just to try to break those numbers out from the universe so that you have two different universes rather than do the stratified sampling. Yeah, no questions so far, Matt.
Cool. All right. So let me see if this will work. How do I exit full screen? I want to pull. So, perfect. Ken, we can all see the new walkthrough up, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Perfect. All right. Just wanted to make sure there were no issues pulling this up. So, after this presentation and after the forum, we are going to be updating the tools that are accessible on CBH Philly website. And one of those up there right now is a RatStats walkthrough that was created. This is the updated walkthrough that incorporates the new steps for the 2019 version. As you can see, it is very detailed, so that those of you who may not have used Excel or RatStats before, kind of helps you get comfortable with just using the very basic functions that are going to be needed to develop a random sample. It goes all the way through to formulas used, where to locate them. Again, this is something that we will post up. It is the updated version and it will be on the website. I'm going to go through this now, and for ease of use, I'm not going to jump back and forth between the Excel sheet and RatStats to this because I don't want to confuse too many people going back and forth. I will go through, well, as I go through and develop a sample for you all, I will fully describe what it is I am doing and the steps I am taking. And again, after this is done, this walkthrough is here for you to be able to replicate on your own. And again, if there's any questions, our contact info will be at the end of the presentation, and we are always more than happy to help people understand this better and get more comfortable with it, so that way, you know, they can utilize it in their own auditing practices. So yeah, even updated the fancy new RatStats windows. It's great. So without further ado, I will get into developing a random sample. If there are any questions, we will review, I'll try to have Ken go over them once I'm done. Ken, unless you want to, anything pops up in the middle and you want me to stop.
Yeah, no, if there's like a technical issue, I may jump in again, but other than that, no, I think we'll wait to the end.
All right. So going back to our presentation real quick, when we talk about the process. So defining population, sampling frame, selecting the design or procedure, sample size, draw the sample. We're going to work through this process now. So our population, for this instance, it is IOP. Our sampling frame is time frame between October 1st, 2017 and November 30th. So we wanted to look at a 2-month window, and at the IOP level, this is our total population. So these are all the claims for that 2-month window that were identified. So we can see that there are, if we go to the bottom, 950, because one line is the headers of the columns. So there are 950 individual claims here. If we were to audit all of them, that's a lot. That takes a lot of manpower, a lot of time, and can be very inefficient. So we would pull a sample from this. Where to begin? All right. In order to keep the investigation, this whole tab, clean and not make any changes or edits, anything like that, we just want to copy that investigation tab, or not. That's better. So all we did was just copy this whole page, so that way if I delete something or something happens, I still have the original information unaffected. We'll call this, for right now, sample develop. Great. What we want to do is calculate the average of these 950 claims. Again, this is all identified keystroke by keystroke in the walkthrough guide. So I want to find the average. And I'm going to go from the last claim to the top. So all of these values, I want to know the average of. Oops. That's our average. So I write that down, mark that, great. Then I want to know the standard deviation of all of these numbers, of these values for the population. Same thing. And I mark that down. Reason I'm doing this is because, as you will see, when we pull up RatStats, this is the basic statistical values that RatStats needs in order for the process to take place. In order for the algorithm to do its thing, we need these background data on our population. So we're going to do stratified variable sample. We don't know our sample size right now. We will call this forum walkthrough. No, we won't. Yes, we will. Perfect. So we need to enter our mean, which was the 88.97. Our standard deviation of 32.12. And the estimated frame size, how many claims were in that population. And that would be 950. You can select specific confidence levels or specific precision points. We keep all selected so that way we can see all the ranges and you have all the data for your own, for your information, and you have it. So we'll process it, and ta-da, just like that, based on that little data entered, RatStats was able to compute varying sample sizes. CMS uses a sampling degree of 90 and 5. Correct, Ken? Or were they down at 80 and 5?
I don't remember, to be honest. I know it's less aggressive than ours.
We hold the 90 and 5 as our base. I believe that's the same as OIG uses. And I know
Yeah,
CMS uses the 90 and 5.
Okay. And
Sorry,
I think the
I
other
just
thing
looked up my note.
Yeah, the other thing for folks to remember in the provider community is, while we have a policy that states we have a certain confidence level, precision level, that one of the reasons I would encourage folks to leave all of the different levels on is because you may look at it and decide, we can go up to 95 and 5. There's not that much of a difference between 99 and 5, so we can be even that much more certain with only 90 extra claim lines. And you may want to go ahead and bump it up to get that extra level of certainty. Whereas you're probably not going to bump it up from 95 to 2 or to 99 and 2, because at that point you're reviewing more than half, almost 2/3 of the claims.
So for our auditing practices and in accordance with our procedure, we follow 90% confidence level and 5% precision. So this number would be 123. Our sample is going to contain 123 claims. Now, how do we get to that 123? Do we go through and randomly pick them? No. Instead, we will use RatStats to help pull 123 on its own. How do we do that? We move back to our working sheet. So the sample development tab, again, full investigation, still untouched. And this is where we will work off of it on the sample development. In order to pull that 123 claim sample, first thing we need to do is give each of these claim lines their own unique identifier for RatStats to know that they're an individual line. So we would insert a column. Little shortcut right here. Boom. Now we've given all 950 claims their own individual identifying number, all the way down to 950, just to make sure. Perfect. From here, we want to create room for the random numbers. Again, sit tight. I'll show you where random numbers are coming from. Our sample size was 100. But why did I highlight 125? I will show you. If I insert 125 rows, I want to copy thing. So that minus is 1. So now we have 124. And I want to leave one open so that way when RatStats does its internal process, it knows that there's a gap between our population, which is this group down here, and the random numbers that we will have up here. So we will go back to RatStats, and we want to pull or another member of our team to replicate the same work you did to see if there were any issues or to be able to follow along just as you did it in your process as well. So we will call this forum walkthrough. Now, quantity of numbers to be generated in sequential order. What is the sample size? That is the question being asked. 123. Spares. In instances where a claim may not be usable, or for some reason it comes up that a claim has to be pulled, RatStats will add extras separate from the 123 of randomly pulled rows, randomly pulled numbers. So that way you have more to go back to and don't have to go through this whole process again. So our sampling low is 1, and we go up to 950 because that's the total population. We can have them display it for us in an Excel file. RNG, random number group. And here is where the seed number will be displayed, and it's important to mark it down as I'm going to do now. So that way, if anyone watching this or on our team wanted to replicate, or even if I wanted to go back and pull the same sample again, having this will let RatStats know the same algorithm and random number set to use. All right, so let's view. This is a nice part. Before, in former RatStats, you had to close RatStats, open the Excel file. Now they give you the option just to view directly from the software, which is great. Over here, if you look at the bottom, spares. These are the 10 spares that we asked RatStats to pull. Our main focus, though, will be values. And here are the 123 random numbers that were pulled. So what I want to do now is highlight those. I'm going to copy them, and I'm going to bring them back into our working piece. So there's the 123 random numbers assigned, our gap between the two, and our full population at the bottom. From here, Excel will do the work for us. Our list range, we're going to highlight all the unique IDs for the population, and we're going to define the criteria of the random numbers that RatStats gave us. We want the unique records only that were identified, so these unique numbers. And click OK, but nothing happened. Oh no. Actually, it did. You see these numbers blue? Excel eliminated any of the numbers that were not in this list of identified random numbers and compiled it for us. So here we have 123 randomly selected, statistically sound sample for us. The last thing we need to do, all Excel did was compact the other claim lines that weren't included in the random numbers we assigned. So if I were to copy all of this, I would still be copying those numbers that are no longer listed. Therefore, we have to tell Excel we only want those cells that are visible. So anything in the background that we don't see, we don't want anymore. And just like that, I can copy this group. Have a new book. And here you go. Now you have 123. Remember, there's one heading. So 123 randomly selected claim lines. And at this point, this is where your audit can begin. So this is the point at which you would pull the files you need and you would review them, or if you're conducting a self-audit, again, same thing. This lets you know the records you need to look at, the dates, all of that. And statistically sound, random sample, no favoritism, no picking out specific ones, just random numbers assigned to them. Alrighty, moving forward. So the takeaways, I know that walkthrough was pretty quick and you're in a flurry and you're sitting there wondering, I have no idea what you just did. I don't even know how to use it. I understand that. For me, the first time I was introduced to RATstats, I had the same feeling, but I wanted to show you just how simple and quick it can be to go from 950 claim lines in a population that you have to audit. And that's a lot. That's a lot of time, a lot of work, a lot of manpower, that in a few minutes, we have a statistically sound random sample of 123. And that gives us the opportunity to have a much more manageable audit. So some takeaways: the RATstats software is used by both OIG and CMS. CBH uses it as well. Using RATstats can strengthen your ability and your own compliance plan and the work that's being done in your agencies. Great for internal audits and for self-audits, which Lauren and Leanne, I believe, will be going over. And it's efficient and accurate. Again, I don't claim to be a statistician, but OIG had third-party contractors as well review the process and the algorithms to make sure that the information being provided is accurate. And it's efficient. In a few short minutes, we were able to identify what the sample size should be and randomly pull the sample rather from a population. I've included some references to CMS's website as well as OIG's, and also where RATstats statistical software can be found. It is a free program that you can download right from the OIG website. They also have the older version as well as the manual for it, which is an exciting read. Although the RATstats manual that is on the website is for the 2010 version, OIG does note that there are very similar nothing super significant has changed, and they recommend using the 2010 user manual to address any issues at this time until they update their 2019 user manual. I will leave this up for a second. Also, this presentation will be posted onto CBH's website, as well as the other forum materials when everything's done for the day. Our walkthrough will be up. So the walkthrough guide will be up on CBH Philly's website. Again, we are here for questions and are happy to help in any way. I understand that this may be very new and uncharted water for some people in our provider network and some of you watching right now. I just want you to know it is not as difficult or scary as it looks. It's actually very useful and very user-friendly once you get a general understanding of it. But until that point, if ever you have questions or want to learn more about it or practice on your own and need someone to just kind of double check the work, we are happy to help our providers better understand this software and this tool to help build up your own auditing tool and practices for an effective compliance program. That's all I have. I told you it would be exciting, and I hope it was. Ken, are there any questions?
Not yet, but we'll give people a chance to type because I'm sure people were hanging on every word, so they didn't want to risk missing something for typing. Just a couple of things though that I wanted to highlight. Matt makes it look exceedingly easy.
Sorry.
It's because Matt picks that up very quickly, but also because Matt's had a lot of practice at it. And so when we all at CBH first started using it, I don't want to speak for all of us, but I'm pretty sure that I can. All of us had a moment where we thought we were going to get the little blue numbers at the end, and we didn't. Something else happened because we got something backwards, from criteria to list range.
Several times.
It does come with practice, and so you get more comfortable with it. Matt's also being very humble in that the companion guide and the user manual that come with RAD stats, I would not encourage anyone to start there. You certainly can. That's the official document. I think you would get more intimidated by it if you start there. It's kind of like if you started mountain biking and you started doing the rampage stuff out in Utah, like that's probably not the place to start and ease yourself into it.
If you wanted to go skiing for the first time and you decided to go down a double black diamond just because it was a good view,
or watching people do that, is probably going to intimidate you a little bit. So I would reach out to us. Again, you don't have to. You could always reach out to an outside subject matter expert too. But Matt is very accurate. We are definitely here to help in this process and ease you through it if you haven't already used it.
And
go ahead.
Real quick, sorry, Ked. The one thing I also want to definitely encourage everyone to do is when you start using this, don't be intimidated and utilize this walkthrough. Some people may be advanced with computers and everything, but if you follow along down to every keystroke, this can definitely work as the training wheels to get you more comfortable with it. I moved through it very quickly because I kind of, when developing this walkthrough, did this step by step, and it helped ease the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, as you walk through it, though, reach out to us. And when Lauren and Leanne talk about it, again, the thing we always stress before you start down this self-audit path, reach out to us and let us know what you're looking at. It's not going to make us come out and look at things before you. It's not going to be a gotcha moment. We really just want to make sure you don't get down a path and get in over your head with something or start taking a wrong path. The other thing that I want to talk about is when you may want to use it versus when we use it. We have shifted now to using random sampling as much as we can. And so the reason you would want to use random sampling is and to be perfectly honest with everyone, when we used to do our routine audits, we would just come out to see you every 3 years because we missed you again and we just wanted to come spend some time. We would kind of cherry pick some of the claims. So we knew, for example, historically it was a problem when members receive the same service on the same day, particularly more than 2 services on the same day. there was kind of a known issue with that sometimes that meant that the same service was being billed twice. Not always the case, but that was something we wanted to look at. So we flagged that and we would look at that. We would flag the outliers. And so we would flag if the average was an hour outpatient session, we would flag both the 30-minute sessions and we would flag the 2-hour sessions. And so we never really did a random sample. And so because of that, we could never draw any conclusions. And it's the same for you guys. So if you are cherry picking things that look bad, it's great in terms of you're doing some checks, but you can't really draw any conclusions of the whole sample unless you randomize it. And so it's really important, even if you don't go to the step of doing the extrapolation and figuring out like the financial impact through that, to start off with as random a sample as you can get in order for you to be able to draw any kind of conclusion from the work that you've done.
Also, Ken, piggybacking off that, I think it's important to also show on the screen, you'll see the sample that we just created. And again, using rat stats, it presented the random numbers and the sample size. But you can see that with it being a statistically valid random sample, there's one claim line for Amy Adams, but 5 for, Cam Newton. And so the chart list for some providers that CBH, we have recently come out or anything, or in any of our recent tours in the past couple years, and have wondered why the number of charts has increased significantly. It's because we've started utilizing random sampling. And so some charts may only have one claim line for a specific thing, others may have more. So the number of charts utilized does increase. But again, the reason for that is because we're utilizing randomly assigned numbers and the sample developed is truly random.
Yep. For us, when we use it, and again, we will use it even for the probe samples that we do, we'll try to randomize it. For us to go up to extrapolation, and just to talk about that, it means that we are at a universe size where we don't feel comfortable doing 100% review. So we've defined that as 500 or more claim lines, so 501 or more. And for which we have an issue at a provider or a group of providers for like a level of care, for example, or with a specific level of care across a number of different providers and provider types, where the traditional methods of correcting a problem haven't resolved it. And so the traditional methods are educational audits, education, like through compliance matters, through this form, and then the audits, the regular targeted audits or probe audits, when we've gone out numbers of times and we continue to see the same problem over and over and over again. That's kind of the last tool in the toolbox for us to use in order, one, to make sure that we get all the money back that may have been paid out inappropriately, but also to correct the behavior moving forward. We have used it exceedingly rarely again, and which is the reason we decided to leave the extrapolation talk for something separate as we needed it and talk more about the random sampling, because again, I think the random sampling is something that should be done pretty much every time you want to do an audit. You could do your own, pull 10 out of a hat, you could do that, but this gives you some assurance that you're going to be able to draw some conclusion if you follow it. So we do have a couple questions. So if folks are struggling with developing a sample, is CBH available to provide some TA? We'd love to do that. I say we'd love to do that because it's almost never me that does that, but Matt actually does like it. We have other folks who go out and they love to geek out over talking about rat stats and sampling. So by all means, reach out to us at the cbh.compliancecontact@phila.gov, and we can help you get that. And that can be as simple as walking through a step where you're hung up on, like you get to the IKEA directions and you can't figure out picture number 4, but you'd be fine if you get past picture number 4, we can do that. Or we can walk you through the whole thing. We can do either. And the follow-up question, is seed number info for the purpose of inter-rater reliability? Yes, it can be. If you're considering inter-rater reliability, to make sure that different people are able to set up samples correctly, and I use the rabbit ears for correct. Quite frankly, the reason primarily it's done though is to be able to, it's kind of the modern equivalent of showing your work, right? So if there's ever a question about whether or not CBH or a payer or you as the compliance officer, say at an agency, did something fairly and randomly, this is the way you can prove it, whether that be in court or whether that be to a compliance or audit committee. This is the way you can go say, here's what the numbers generated. I can replicate it by using the seed number so that you can see we didn't cherry pick any claims that we either make ourselves look better or worse, depending on which side of the fence you're on. It's a totally random process. So the answer is yes, but it goes a little beyond that. Any other questions from Matt or anybody on the team for that matter? All right. So I think one of the things I forgot to mention earlier too, the compliance matters, we've only done one this year and I apologize for that. And it was the code focused. We are planning on doing another one here in the fall that'll go over the work plan for 2021 once it gets approved by committee. But we're also going to take questions from here, and whether that's from the chat or for folks who aren't able to join so they can benefit from it, or for questions where you log off and tonight you wake up at 3 a.m. in a cold sweat because you wanted to ask Matt something about why Joel Embiid was selected, but for some reason Derek Jeter wasn't, and you think there's a problem with rat stats, then you can certainly ask that, and we will include those in the compliance matters as well. All right, guys. So question just came in. Looking at the CBH site now, the tools will be posted when the form is complete. Yes. So the plan is to post the slide decks, but this is my hope. Whether or not we can make it happen technology-wise is another thing. Post the slide decks on the compliance page. And so I think it's actually the fraud, waste, and abuse section is what it's titled rather than compliance. And then post the recordings that we've done of the trainings today on the actual training page. So I think there on the training page, there's already a recording for like telehealth that we had done in partnership with network development. There may be another network development kind of telehealth guidelines there, and post that there. So you should be able to find it in 2 places. My guess is the slide decks get posted much more quickly than what the recording will, but both hopefully will be available. The slide decks definitely be available. As I said in the chat during lunch too, if you're in the process of starting this now and you can't wait the week or 2 weeks it may take us to get these things posted, hope it doesn't take that long, email us now or after the forum, and we can email you out the slide decks that you need immediately.
Also on the CBH Philly under the audit tools page, there is a walkthrough guide that is for the 2010 version of RatStats. So it is the same steps go into it, utilizing Excel and taking it in that way. It's just the specific details that are updated in the 2019 RatStats version will be in the updated walkthrough guide. So if you have the older version of RatStats, you can certainly use the walkthrough guide that is on the site, but it will be updated again, as Ken said, in the coming days, week.
All right, guys. So Matt will stop sharing screen here in a minute. I'll put our bath time bear back up for the break. And then at 2:15, hopefully we will be queued up and ready for Lauren and Leanne to wrap up the day with Compliance 102. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate
Great.
the work.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
All right. Thank you.